Washington, D.C. feels different today, tense, uncertain. Yesterday, August 11, 2025, President Trump declared a crime emergency, placing the city under federal control. The local police now answer to the Attorney General, and the streets are filled with federal agents and National Guard troops. Humvees line the monuments, and Border Patrol agents patrol city streets, an unprecedented show of federal force. The White House calls it a necessary intervention. Many residents see it as an occupation. D.C. has become the center of a national debate over power and who controls America's cities. The administration claims it's about safety, citing a supposed crime wave. Local leaders argue the takeover is political, not practical, and point to their own crime data. The mayor and city council have been sidelined, their authority overridden by a decades-old law. Residents are caught in the middle, their daily lives upended overnight. This is more than a news story. It's a test of American democracy and local self-rule. The next few weeks will be crucial, not just for D.C., but for any city that could face similar federal intervention. The nation is watching to see what happens next. President Trump's announcement was pure political theater. He declared Liberation Day for D.C., framing the move as a heroic rescue. He described the city as a failed state, justifying a sweeping federal takeover. The administration invoked a dormant provision in the D.C. Home Rule Act, putting the Metropolitan Police under Attorney General Pam Bondi's command for at least 30 days. The message: the federal government is in charge, for as long as it wants. The justification: claims of intolerable crime and chaos highlighted by a few high-profile incidents. The narrative: D.C. is dangerous, its leaders incompetent, and only federal intervention can save it. For residents, hearing their city described in such dire terms was infuriating. Many saw the move as a political stunt, not a genuine rescue. The term Liberation Day stung. A city long fighting for autonomy now stripped of it. The stage was set for a major conflict over who truly governs the capital. The federal takeover wasn't just words. It was a rapid, visible mobilization. Hundreds of federal law enforcement officers from over 15 agencies, plus 800 National Guard troops, flooded the city. Agents from the FBI, ATF, Secret Service, and even Border Patrol joined the operation. Soldiers in camouflage patrolled alongside police, blurring the line between law enforcement and military action. Attorney General Pam Bondi now commanded the city's police, creating a direct chain from the White House to the streets. The presence of Border Patrol agents, trained for border enforcement, raised eyebrows and criticism. Critics argued their deployment was more about optics than effective policing. The overwhelming show of force was meant to project federal dominance. But the sudden influx created confusion. How would these agencies coordinate, and who was accountable? The city was under federal control, but the path forward was anything but clear. Residents wondered, what happens if this force clashes with a skeptical public? The Trump administration's justification hinges on claims of a catastrophic crime wave in D.C., but the city's own crime statistics tell a different story. According to the Metropolitan Police, violent crime in 2025 is down 26% from last year. Homicides are down 12%, and carjackings have plummeted compared to 2024. The Justice Department itself reported violent crime at a 30-year low earlier this year. The administration's narrative relies on isolated incidents and outdated statistics, ignoring the city's recent progress. Critics accuse the White House of cherry-picking data to manufacture a crisis. The numbers show a city improving, not collapsing. This disconnect exposes the takeover as a political maneuver, not a data-driven response. For D.C. leaders and residents, the facts are clear. The federal intervention isn't about public safety. It's about power, perception, and control. The numbers simply don't add up to the administration's story. The real emergency may be the assault on local governance, not crime. The federal takeover has split D.C. into two realities: the Trump administration's narrative, a city in chaos, rescued by federal might. This story, amplified nationwide, paints D.C. as a failed, dangerous place. Local leaders and residents tell a different story, one of progress, resilience, and frustration at being misrepresented. They point to falling crime rates and community efforts, seeing the takeover as a political insult. The administration's version ignores data and local voices, branding D.C. as a cautionary tale for blue cities. For the city, it's a fight to reclaim its identity and tell its own story. Mayor Bowser and Attorney General Schwalbe push back with facts and press conferences, battling the president's megaphone. The conflict is about more than crime. It's about who defines a city's reality. The federal government has the power, but D.C. is fighting back with pride and evidence. This battle of narratives is the heart of the takeover. The city refuses to be a political pawn. The federal takeover sparked immediate protests across D.C. Crowds gathered at the White House and Black Lives Matter Plaza, united in outrage. Signs read, "Hands off D.C. and statehood now," a diverse coalition demanding self-governance. Mayor Bowser condemned the move as undemocratic, renewing calls for D.C. statehood. Attorney General Schwalbe called the takeover unlawful, setting the stage for a legal battle. National civil rights leaders joined in, framing the intervention as an affront to justice and representation. Critics saw the move as political punishment for a city that overwhelmingly rejected Trump at the polls. The protests weren't just about policy, they were a defense of D.C.'s identity. The city's leaders and residents stood united against federal overreach. The message was clear: D.C. demands the right to govern itself. The fight had moved from the halls of power to the streets. The legal basis for the takeover is the D.C. Home Rule Act of 1973. This law gave D.C. residents the right to elect their own leaders, but with major limitations. Congress retained ultimate authority, and the president can seize control of the police in an emergency. For 50 years, this power was unused, a sleeping giant in federal law. Trump's declaration awakened it, exposing the fragility of D.C.'s autonomy. Unlike other cities, D.C.'s police have always existed under the threat of federal command. The Home Rule Act created a system where local power can be revoked at any moment. Now the law's vague emergency provision is under scrutiny, seen as ripe for political abuse. The legal battle isn't just about statutes. It's about democracy and whether home rule is real or just an illusion. The crisis has reignited calls to fix the fundamental unfairness at the heart of D.C.'s governance. While the D.C. takeover is unprecedented, it fits a pattern of Trump-era federal interventions in blue cities. Similar tactics were used in Portland in 2020 and Los Angeles in 2025, testing the limits of presidential power. The D.C. move is unique, backed by the Home Rule Act, but it's part of a broader strategy to assert federal dominance. The timing is political, playing to a national base with images of law and order. D.C. becomes the perfect stage, a democratic stronghold now under federal control. The spectacle is designed for maximum impact, regardless of local realities. These interventions challenge the traditional balance between federal and local authority. They risk politicizing law enforcement and eroding trust between governments. What's happening in D.C. is a case study in aggressive federal power, with implications for cities nationwide. The question, is this the new normal for American federalism? The takeover has reignited the D.C. statehood movement. Advocates argue that as long as D.C. remains a federal district, its residents are vulnerable to political whims. The slogan, "Taxation without representation," now carries new urgency. Mayor Bowser and local leaders push for statehood as the only way to guarantee self-governance. Opponents cite constitutional and political objections, fearing a shift in congressional power. The crisis has deepened partisan divides, with Democrats rallying for statehood and Republicans resisting. Federal troops on D.C. streets have turned a theoretical debate into a tangible crisis. The takeover exposes the fundamental inequality at the heart of D.C.'s relationship with the federal government. The nation must now confront a simple question. Should D.C.'s 700,000 residents have the same rights as everyone else? The answer will shape not just the city's future, but the country's commitment to democracy. The fight for D.C. is now a fight for its very future.